Do you know that there are different types of fasting, not just caloric fasting, digital fasting, fasting from pleasure or delayed pleasure, or even silent. It has a tremendous effect on your brain, immune function, and in your gut. If you like this kind of topic, please like and listen at the end of the video because we are going to slowly digest this one by one. This is Dr. Raul Enad from Cadenza Medical Clinic, Ave Maria, Florida, on medicine and faith. Let's start with caloric fasting. What are the types of caloric fasting? Number one, most common, is the fasting. The usual is 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating period. So what does that mean? So it's called the time-restricted fasting or the intermittent fasting. So you eat, for example, at 6, the last meal will be about 6 p.m., full meal, and you eat until about 10 a.m. So that covers a 16-hour window fast. Don't worry, you will not die. What benefits do they have? It increased insulin sensitivity, meaning your insulin will be working better to have the glucose to enter the cell so that it will be used as a source of energy. ATP is what we call about. Second fasting would be alternate fasting, alternate day fasting. You eat now, normal, and then the alternate day would be fasting. Now you don't have to starve. Remember, when you're fasting, always hydrate and make sure you have the essential trace elements, the salts and the vitamins that you need. Because caloric fasting is the key to turning on some other signaling like autophagy or cleansing of the mitochondria to rejuvenate your cell, or even rejuvenation of the stem cell. But it gets better if you challenge your body more. So fasting, alternative fasting would be possibly doing a fasting mimicking diet, like a 500 calorie diet with hydration, and then alternate with normal diet, normal eating habit. 7-day continuous fasting, or once a day, 1 meal a day fasting. That's easy to remember. You don't eat through the day and you eat on certain days, like on Saturday and Sunday, for example, or maybe Wednesday and Friday. Very common among the Catholics. Wednesday in honor of the betrayal of Judas, and Friday on the Passion of Jesus. So it could be done 5 days of normal eating and then fasting on certain days, like Wednesday and Fridays. So on your fasting day, you would only eat once, a meal, a light meal, for example, a vegetable and soup and fish during Wednesday and Friday. That fulfills your Catholic obligation to do fasting, especially during Lent. It is the same kind of idea that turns on insulin sensitivity, autophagy, cell rejuvenation or stem cell rejuvenation. It also helps be strong in your faith, and your soul is also rejuvenated. So the 7-day continuous fasting was also promulgated by this book, Longevity Diet by Dr. Longo. He has this box full of 500 calorie diet that you would take for each day for 7 days. I've tried it myself together with my friend, a bishop, and it was not that bad, really. It's just the intimidation that you might not survive in the second day. Quite honestly, I was able to exercise my routine on the second day. In this book of Dr. Longo, it mentioned a study of cure of diabetes. What they did was to measure the amount of course, the parameters of sugar and metabolism, but they found out that the stem cells of the pancreas, when subjected to this fasting, it also increases the growth hormone. Growth hormone is usually decreased at the age of about 30 and naturally declines as you age. Well, fasting rejuvenates and increases growth hormone. Well, it's been well established that when you fast, it had been proven to even treat seizures. As you know, when you fast, ketone bodies are increased. Ketone body is the better source of energy for the brain. In this book, The Brain Energy, that was written, a brilliant doctor, Christian Palmer, he figured out that most of the common mental illness is not really coming from, it cannot just necessarily be explained by a psychological or trauma. Turns out that the brain is suffering also from hunger. Hunger from what? From fuel. And the best fuel is ketones, and fasting would be the answer. It also is, the brain seems to be deprived of other antioxidants and also trace minerals. That is why the focus of the attention on this book is to eat something that's more healthy, rather than eating more sugar that generates glucose. Glucose generates reactive oxygen species and oxygen radicals in the brain cells. And also, it deprives the brain of energy. So let's move on to the next type of fasting, not caloric fasting, digital fasting, and postponing of pleasure. If you like this video so far, please subscribe. It will help us promote the platform, our content, and share, because somebody might need it like you. Let's talk about digital fasting. And that also includes silence. We are now bombarded. It's called info-obesity. It's not even normal. We cannot get rid of information from text messaging, email, you know what it is. Likes from social media. It heightens the amygdala. Amygdala is a source of anxiety, depression, and anger. Think about this. If you put out a blog, or for example, a post on Facebook, and you're not getting a like, how do you feel? You probably count the number of friends who did not like. True? Well, there is a neurophysiologic explanation about that. The dopamine spikes, the cheap dopamine spikes that is instant. You like those. The other thing is the postponing pleasure. The two things that I can talk about. Stanford released a classic study, the Marshmallow experiment, that they postponed the pleasure of these kids, school kids, for 15 minutes. The condition was they would a bigger treat if they just consume it instantly as it's being served. Well, the outcome of this study is, as you know, the outcome in life is better to those who postpone pleasure. Even just the marshmallow proved this. There's more self-control in their behavior, sexual, financial, relationships. Why is this happening? Because this can be explained because when you have those postponement of pleasure associated with dopamine reward system, it activates the prefrontal cortex, which is a center for proper guidance, proper moral, and proper decision making. In another token about postponing pleasure, the Virgin Mary allegedly told her that fasting doesn't have to be starvation. It's about postponing something. For example, the Virgin Mary explained that if you postpone something, for example, you're thirsty and you postpone just a little bit to drink or quench your thirst, that's enough fasting and pleasing to her. How beautiful that is. You don't have to suffer that much, even just a little consistent, persistent suffering. So let's move on to silence. A book written by Cardinal Sarah, The Power of Silence. It's an amazing book. It really reinforces what Christ has taught us. What a brilliant man. Well, he is the Son of God. He is perfect man. And he exemplified the power of silence. How many times was he silent? In front of Pontius Pilate, in front of Herod. It cost him to change the whole world. The Virgin Mary was quiet. She was silent. And deep inside her heart, she pondered everything, the passion of Christ, every day. Silence will also activate the reward system, the dopamine reward system. Silence reduces stress hormones and calms the nervous system. Imagine if you don't have to talk or talk back about many different things that offends you. We cannot claim really that who am I? Who am I to be told that way? Well, Jesus exemplified that yes, we can still be vulnerable to that, and we can actually offer it up for the salvation of soul and to unite our suffering with Jesus, the false accusation that we get. It improves or increases the vagal tone that innervates the parasympathetic system. The parasympathetic system, as you know, calms the brain, the rest and digest side of the autonomic nervous system. It shies away from the sympathetic tone, which is the fight-flight, that you're always heightened with fear, or seemingly the fear of missing out, or it's called FOMO, F-O-M-O, fear of missing out. You fear everything. You feel like you need to respond on something because you might be defeated. 2 minutes of silence is enough to decrease the cortisol level, to decrease the norepinephrine and epinephrine. It enhances brain activity, neuroplasticity, and neurogenesis, meaning the hippocampus especially, which is a center for joy and memory, increases the brain cells, meaning there's the increase in the size of the hippocampus. That's why it becomes more powerful longitudinally or through the years. Even the different centers of executive function, the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate, these are the centers of the brain that increases when you're silent. Take time to respond to your email, and let alone when somebody talks to you right up front in your face, be quiet. How many times through the day will you be bombarded with stimulus, text messaging, emails, or even distraction when you're there? That's why it hurts me when I'm working in the hospital and there will be a lot of text messaging. Not that I don't want to be bothered, but the brain takes a lot of energy when you stop, when you're thinking through and you stop. I'm talking about energy and ATP. That's why it creates mental fatigue at work. That's why you have from time to time, take a pause through the things that you go through and you'll think better and you'll have less mistake. So meditation through his passion, through his silence in the agony of the garden in front of Herod, in front of Pontius Pilate, is the best example for us to remain silent. And Jose Maria Escrivá said, if you don't meditate on the passion of Christ, you will never get to know him. St. Alfonso Ligori would say, if you don't meditate and just pray vocal prayer, you'll be more tempted and tempted until you fall. Now let's move on to the postponing. Digital online shopping, for example, a big example. It strongly activates the mesolimbic dopamine system. This is the ventral tegmental area that releases dopamine, spikes of these. Unfortunately, it's just like eating sugar all the time. There's an unending desire of these things. You'll become desensitized, meaning this reward system will not mean much to you. Most of the shoppers who does digital shopping, studies showed that they're not able to tap the prefrontal cortex and they make mistakes in their serious decision making, including relationships, buying important things in life, or planning out things like trips. Did you notice that when you shop on something, there will be more options to do the same? I suggest to you, this is bad. It decreases, and again, the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. You would even sometimes forget what you had just bought because the hippocampus is not there. There's no way controlling on what you want to do. So what about meditation? Meditation caps it all. Meditation, especially on the unconditional love of Jesus, helps us regain our purpose and memory. It calms the brain. It improves the executive function of how you financially plan out your life or your career or your relationship. It decreases the amygdala, which is the center for anxiety, depression, and anger. Meditation also improves the population of the microbiome, which is pretty much connected with the whole system. There's a gut-immune-brain connection. When you meditate, when you remain silent, when you do digital detox, or when you fast, a better population of bacteria, which ferments the fiber that you need to feed, produces more butyrate to heal the leaky gut or the intestinal permeability brought about by stress, the stress that triggers the sympathetic tone. These bacteria, in the presence of good fiber, will increase the production of short-chain fatty acid, the butyrate that heals the gut, propionate, and acetate. These are all connected. The brain, when you silence it, the gut, when you fast, your soul, when you meditate, these are all good for you. If you have any suggestions about what might be done to fast or do silence, please let me know. Now the question is, are you ready to recapture your health through fasting, caloric fasting, digital fasting, postponement of pleasure, digital online shopping, silence, and especially meditation? Do you have any questions about the type of fasting, the type of digital fasting that you might want to do? If you can share with us what you might want to start or your resolution after you hear this video. Well, this is Dr. Enad from Cadenza Medical Clinic. In our next video, we'll be talking about corporal mortification. You don't have to be crucified again. It's about the simple sacrifice for your body. Till next time, thank you.